go ahead and get started today. Today we're going to kind of review 11.2 and 11.3, and then kind of do a general overall, starting to review all the chapters 10 and 11. You have Connect Math 10.2 due tomorrow. I think there's a quiz due today, but in terms of actual homeworks, 10.2 is due tomorrow. And then Thursday, you start the chapter 11 homeworks being due. Don't forget for 11.1 on Thursday that it will give you, there'll be multiple problems that will give you the data in one order, like reusable bags, then paper, then plastic for the observed, but then for the expected, they'll give it to you in a different order, right? Paper, then plastic, then reusable. And you have to recognize that you better note that they're coming in different order, or else you're going to not get the right answers over and over again. It's going to drive you crazy. Okay. Our final is on December 16th, so a week from Thursday. I'm going to have ours at 5 o'clock. Technically it's at 5:30, but if you come at 5 o'clock, you can start early, and then you get a little bit of bonus time at the end. Right? Otherwise, you don't get any bonus time. So if you start at 5, then I can give you till like 7:20, basically. All right. Good. And you all know that chapters 10 and 11 are a significant portion, 35% of your final, since exam 4 is rolled into the final. So this is a summary of the claims. This is kind of good to keep note of. So this is for chapters 10 and 11. You're going to get a bunch of different problems, especially in the homework. If your claim is something along the lines of equal, or independent, or no relation, or that they're the same, or they're as expected, no correlation, no difference, those are all H-naught claims. So for your homework, if you get a claim like one of these, then your claim is H-naught. If you get one of the opposites, the opposite of equal is not equal. The opposite of independent is dependent. The opposite of no relation is related. The opposite of same is not the same. The opposite of as expected is not as expected. Opposite of correlation is correlated, and the opposite of no difference is different. If you get one of these as your claim, then your claim is going to be H1. Yeah?
So let's say you mentioned chapter 10, I think it was H1 is always going to be the claim, and then for chapter 11, H0 is always going to be the claim.
For me, for my exams, yes, that is true. For the homework, it gets a little fuzzier. Does that make sense?
So what about, yes, it makes sense, thank you. What about for the exam though, if it says there's a chapter 11 question and it says something that includes some of the vocabulary terms concurrent with H0?
It will,
or H1, sorry.
For H1, it will not.
Okay.
So if it does, then say, Ms. Young, you said, and I'll be like, oh, and I'll change that. But okay. I'm pretty sure the final's correct in how it goes, and that it should be that for chapter 11, your H0 is going to be your claim. So it's going to be one of these words in here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so again, for you can, for your H1, for the exam, I am totally fine with you generically using these claims. All right, for chapter 10, correlations should be the claim that I'm looking for in the exam, which means you're going to use the word support. For chapter 11, it's going to be H0. So for 11.1 and 11.2, the chi-squared, it's going to be proportions as expected. Right, so again, we're going to be looking to reject or not reject in step 5. For ANOVA, you just use a generic claim that the means are the same. And again, you're looking for reject in step 5. The final cover, chapters 1 through 11. You're allowed 1 page of notes, both sides of handwritten notes. You can use all of your half page one-sided from the previous exams plus another half page if you like, or you can start fresh and do a whole new one if you want. Up to you. You get to use all of your tables, the magic formula sheet, and your TI calculator. If you want to bring blank sheets for scratch paper, you can do that. Almost nobody ever needs it, but occasionally there's one person or two people who might need it. That happens sometimes, yeah.
Will there be a portion of the test that's no calculator or no TA?
No, it's all going to be calculated. Yes. Bless you. Again, here's the study guide for this final. Please note I made an error for study guide exam 2. It's not problem 22, it's problem 23. So if you took a picture of it last time, it's problem 23, not 22 from study guide 2 that you should be focusing on. But yeah, these are the problems for each of the previous study guides that you should be using as your final study guide, along with all of study guide number 4, which is in the back of the room. All right, so 11.2, contingency tables. That's the matrix. That's when you have your data that looks like that, for example. Right? So it's when you have stuff like this, right? Contingency table. So we call it a contingency table or two-way table. So it's got categories on top, categories along the sides, full spots. Okay. So what am I reading? How about Drew? Go ahead and read for me.
11.2 test using contingency tables. When we have a
Contingency.
Contingency table, we can use the test of independence of variables is used to determine whether two variables are independent of or related to each other when a single sample is selected. The test of homogeneity.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. My bad. Let's do that.
Of proportions is used to determine whether the proportions for a variable are equal when several samples are selected from different populations.
Great. Remember we talked about the fact that these are the exact same test. Because if two variables are independent, that means their proportions are equal. So independence, right? Two variables are independent. It's the same thing as the proportions being equal. They're the same test. Back to where it's supposed to be. The chi-square goodness of fit test is the test we use for this. So the hypotheses can either be there's a relationship for H naught or there is a relationship for H1, but you can just generically use O sub I equals E sub I for your H naught. Right? So that's totally fine. You can use the generic one on the exam. Like I said, we're just going to cover these ones pretty quickly and pretty lightly. We're not going to be super detailed about them. The test of independence is the exact same chi-squared as your 11.1. You take every observed value for every category, subtract the expected value, square that, divide by the expected. You do that for every category, every sort of box you have. And then you add them up. Now because you already showed on 11.1, you're going to be showing that you know this formula, you're putting all those numbers in on your sheet to calculate them. You do not need to write that again for 11.2. Instead, you can just use the matrix on your calculator, put your data into the matrix, and use stat calc chi-squared test to find that. However, I do expect you to show that you know how to find these expected values. Right? So you always have to calculate the expected values. For this one, it's the row sum multiplied by the column sum divided by the grand total. So what is that? It's this right here. For the first one and for the last one, I expect you to find these. So for the first one, its row sum is this one right here. Its column sum is that one right there. And the grand total is 400. So 144, so E11, this is the first row, first column, so E11 is that showing up okay? 144 times 100 divided by the grand total of 400. for the last one, what row is that? It's the second row, fourth column, so this would be E24. You take, again, the row total times the column total divided by the grand total. So that's how you find those. So someone said, well, why do you have to find those at all? It's because we expect you to find, we expect you to find all of them in theory, but we're not going to torture you this time with that, so instead just prove you know how to find them. Because normally you find those and then you do the observed value minus that expected value you found, square it, divide by the expected value. Right, for all the boxes. We're just making you do it for the first box and the last box. Okay. So instead, for the test stat, again, you can just take your matrix, put it into matrix A, and then do stat test chi-square test of A. You do not put anything into B. You put your data into A, and it will take A, calculate the observed, the expected values, and store them into B. So it calculates the expected values for you and puts it into B. All right. Here are all the steps. All right. So say your hypothesis, identify the claim, find the critical value using the chi-squared table, find your test stat using stat and test, chi-squared test, and find your first and last expected values. Then make the decision, and finally summarize the results for the claim. All right. Not everybody's quiet. Since I want someone to read, they all shut up. Okay. Sorry. Alondra, go ahead and read anyways. Homogeneity.
Homogeneity of proportions test is used when samples are collected from several different populations, and the researcher is interested in determining whether the proportions of elements that have a common characteristics are the same for each population.
Right, so that's exactly the same as the previous one. The only difference is that for hypotheses, you're going to be using P1, you know, proportions are the same, so P1 equals P2 equals P3 equals P4, however many proportions you have, and then H1B at least one differs. But again, generically, you just use O sub I equals E sub I, or O sub I is not equal to E sub I. So I think next what we should do is maybe go over the quiz part, and then I'm going to have you do this example. I'll have you work on this problem after that. So first, so yes, so everyone listen up. Francois is going to explain what he did for your first quiz problem. Francois, go ahead.
All right, so for, this is a matrix problem, and for step one, I wrote out H naught H1. H naught is O sub I is equal to E sub I, I forgot to write that's your claim. That's, you're going to reject that at the end. And then H1 is equal to, or is, O sub I is not equal to E sub I. Step two, alpha is 0.05, and degrees of freedom is your row minus 1, and then your column minus 1, which is 2. And I got critical value of 5.991. And I drew my picture. For step 3, I wrote the expected for row 1 and column 1, and then row 2 of column 3.
Right, so see how he did his first one, 1185, 51 divided by the grand total. Great.
And I got 30.4 for the first row column, and then 570 column. And then I did my test, my stat test, chi-square test, and I got 112.4, rounded to the first rule. And that's like way in our rejection zone, so we're going to reject H naught. And I said there is enough evidence to reject a claim that being the victim of a crime is independent of the element.
Perfect. Yep, so independent, again, independent is H naught. Proportions are equal, independent, those are all H naught claims. You could also have said that the proportions are expected. Reject the claim that the proportions are expected. That'd be fine as well. Alright, so now go ahead and work on the next two problems, which is this one, and then lab problem number 9 below that. Or yours might call it lab problem number 3, depending on what version of the thing you have. So now we're back to our notes. You should have two problems. I believe they're one on top of each other, or maybe the next page in your notes. Okay, so the second problem, you should try to do it just like you would for the exam. Do not rely upon staring at your notes and copying what you did last time. That's not going to help you on the exam. Only use your note card. And maybe use this as an opportunity to figure out what should be on that note card, right?